Today we're going to talk about the RAW versus DNG debate and also share my personal choice for photo storage. I'm Leo and this is my channel, Leo Tech Lab. If you don't know it yet, take a look at the introduction video. Let's go. First, a little bit of context. When we take a picture with a modern camera or mobile phone, we usually have two options for how to store that image: RAW format or processed format, such as JPEG or HEIC. For more details about photo file formats, you can watch my video linked in the description. In this video, we're going to focus only on RAW images. So, are all RAW files the same? Final delivery formats such as JPEGs or HEICs are typically standard and are used by most cameras and software manufacturers, which makes them much easier to edit and consume. Unfortunately, when it comes to RAWs, the landscape changes a bit. The top manufacturers have decided to define their own proprietary and closed RAW formats. This makes it difficult to edit and consume, given that without a formal public specification of the various RAW formats, it is not guaranteed that the information contained in them can be 100% accessed by the various photo editing applications. To deal with this problem, photo editors have implemented their own access to the various RAW formats using a technique called reverse engineering, which is basically an iterative process of trial and error until they can read the information they need. This is why some editors are better at dealing with some proprietary formats than others. For example, Capture One, which has partnered with Sony on its free editor, can read more information than Adobe Lightroom, such as embedded lens profiles, for example. To deal with this problem, Adobe has developed an open source RAW format called DNG or Digital Negative, so that it can be used in a standard way by the whole photography ecosystem. This way, cameras can record their RAWs directly into DNGs and editing software can access 100% of the information stored in them. And to facilitate the adoption of the format, Adobe has made available a converter from RAWs to DNGs. But there are some problems with DNGs. The main one comes from a fact that we already mentioned. It is not currently possible to read 100% of the proprietary format of the cameras, so the 100% copy of the information is not assured when converting from RAW to DNG. This means that we can convert from RAW to DNG, but the reverse process is no longer possible because information has been lost in the conversion process. On the other hand, the DNG format has not been adopted by the major camera manufacturers, who continue to use their proprietary closed formats, which makes the situation even more complicated. The final problem relates to the question of the size occupied by the DNG. Although in general DNG takes up less space than the corresponding RAW, sometimes we have to expand the DNG in a process called demosaic to be able to apply some processing algorithms, for example, the denoise algorithm. In its expanded form, a DNG takes up significantly more space than the original RAW. For example, it can occupy more than triple the space. So what do we do now? Do we use the manufacturer's RAW or do we convert them to DNG? To help us answer this question, I think it's important to mention one more key aspect: metadata. As we already know from my previous video about photo file formats, link in the description if you want to take a look, an image file also stores associated information in the form of metadata. However, we have already seen that in the case of RAWs, these are mostly proprietary files, which cannot be read 100%. The good part is that in terms of the image itself, there seems to be a consensus that it can be accessed 100% by most editors, which means that the reading problem is mostly situated in the metadata. That is why most editors only allow access to RAWs in read-only mode, to ensure they don't ruin the file with a failed write to a metadata field, for example. In the case of processed images or DNGs, there is no problem in manipulating the metadata given that they are well-known standard formats. So how do editors solve the issue of editing metadata with proprietary RAWs? Mostly they use two techniques. The first one, they save the modified information in sidecar files, one for each corresponding RAW file. For example, in Adobe Lightroom, these are the XMP metadata files. Second option, they store the metadata information in their own database. For example, in case of Adobe Lightroom, this database is called the catalog. Do note that these databases are also proprietary to the editor. In my opinion, both techniques have problems. Sidecar files are error-prone. For example, I can copy a photo, but I can forget to copy the corresponding sidecar, and now I've lost all metadata associated with that photo. Also, sidecar files may be proprietary, meaning I am stuck with that particular editor and I cannot switch to a different editor. In case of databases, these are mostly proprietary, meaning we have no choice but to use that specific editor. So, what's my solution for storing my photos? To answer this, it's time to define my requirements for RAW storage to help me decide on how to store my photos. First requirement, to the best of my ability, I need to be able to edit with any editor so that I don't get stuck in a specific proprietary editor. Second requirement, I need to keep image and metadata together in the same file so that I don't risk losing the corresponding metadata to that image. Third requirement, I need to save the RAW files as compressed as possible without any loss of information, meaning lossless compression. Fourth requirement, I need to be able to recover the original proprietary RAW file if necessary. So, with these requirements, saving the original RAWs won't do, given that I can't keep the image together with the metadata in the same file. On the other hand, if I convert the RAWs to DNG, I lose information, and it is no longer possible to recover the original proprietary RAW. In this case, the only solution that meets all the requirements is conversion from RAW to DNG, embedding the original RAW inside the DNG, which is one of the conversion options in the Adobe DNG converter. In this case, I'm trading disk space for security. But in my opinion, disk space is relatively cheap and I think it's a worthwhile investment. Ideally, in the future, it would be very nice if I could just use DNGs without the embedded RAW to save on storage space. But until then, this method works for me. And that's it. I hope it was useful to you. Please leave your feedback and share your ideas and opinions in the comments. And if you want to stay up to date with the next videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.